What happens when a royal guest thinks he's above the rules of daytime television? In just 33 seconds, one comment turned a respectful interview into the most explosive moment in talk show history. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now because we're pulling back the curtain on royalty's dark side, exposing entitled celebrities and their shocking behavior the cameras never showed you. We've got the raw footage they don't want you to see, and you won't want to miss a single reveal. Drop a comment below and let us know your thoughts on this outrageous behavior. Now let's get into what really happened. Tamron Hall's studio was buzzing with anticipation. The lighting was perfect, the audience was settled in their seats, and the cameras were ready to roll. This was supposed to be a straightforward interview, the kind Tamron had done hundreds of times before. She's known for her warm approach, her ability to make guests feel comfortable, and her genuine curiosity about people's stories. But nobody could have predicted what was about to unfold. Prince Harry walked onto the set with an air of confidence that immediately caught everyone's attention. He didn't wave to the audience the way most guests do. He didn't smile at the crew. He simply strode to his chair and sat down, crossing his legs and leaning back like he owned the place. Tamron greeted him with her signature warmth. "Welcome to the show. We're so happy to have you here today." Harry gave a slight nod, barely acknowledging her words. Already, something felt off. The audience could sense it. Tamron could definitely sense it. She started with an easy question, something light to break the ice. "So, tell us what you've been up to lately. I know you've been involved in some interesting projects." Harry looked at her for a moment, then glanced around the studio as if he was inspecting it. "Well, I've been quite busy actually. Busier than most people could imagine." The way he said it, with that emphasis on most people, sent a ripple through the room. Tamron kept her smile steady. She's a professional after all. "That's wonderful," she said. "Can you tell us more about what's been keeping you so occupied?" Harry leaned forward slightly, and there was something sharp in his expression. "I'm working on projects that actually matter, important things, things that change lives. Not just, sitting around asking questions all day." The audience went silent. Did he really just say that? Tamron's smile didn't waver, but her eyes showed a flash of something. She wasn't going to let that slide, but she also wasn't going to lose her composure. "Well, I think asking questions is pretty important too," Tamron said, her voice still friendly but with a hint of firmness. "It's how we learn about each other, how we share stories, how we connect." Harry waved his hand dismissively. Sure, but there's a difference between real work and, entertainment." Now the audience was starting to murmur. This wasn't just awkward anymore. This was becoming something else entirely. Tamron shifted in her chair, deciding to steer the conversation in a different direction. "Let's talk about your family," she said. "I know that's been a big part of your journey." Harry's expression changed immediately. His jaw tightened, and he sat up straighter. "I'd rather not, actually. That's private." Tamron nodded respectfully. "Of course, I understand. We can talk about whatever you're comfortable with." But Harry wasn't done. You know what the problem is with shows like this? Everyone thinks they have the right to know everything about everyone, like privacy doesn't exist anymore. Tamron kept her cool. "I completely respect your privacy. That's why I'm letting you guide this conversation. We only talk about what you want to talk about." Harry let out a short laugh, but it wasn't friendly. "Right, but you already brought it up, didn't you? You already tried to go there." The tension in the studio was thick now. The crew behind the cameras exchanged worried glances. The audience sat frozen, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. This was not the interview anyone had prepared for. Tamron took a breath. "I apologize if that made you uncomfortable. Why don't we move on to something else? You mentioned your projects. Let's dive deeper into those." Harry shrugged. "What's there to say? I'm doing meaningful work. I'm making a difference. Some of us actually care about the world, not just ratings." There it was again. Another jab. Another insult thinly veiled as a statement. Tamron's patience was being tested, and everyone could see it, but she pressed on, determined to salvage this interview. "I think everyone here cares about making a difference," Tamron said carefully. "That's why we share stories, why we have conversations like this. To inspire people, to inform them." Harry looked directly at her, and his next words came out cold. "Do you really believe that? Or is it just about keeping your show on the air?" The audience gasped. You could hear it echo through the studio. This wasn't just rude anymore. This was a full-on attack. Tamron's face remained composed, but her voice took on a different quality. Stronger, more direct. "I absolutely believe that," she said. I've dedicated my career to telling important stories, to giving voice to people who need to be heard. That's not something I take lightly." Harry smirked. "Well, good for you. Must be nice to feel so important." That was it. That was the line. The audience erupted in scattered boos and shocked exclamations. Tamron held up her hand, asking for quiet, and the room settled down. She looked at Harry with a steady gaze. "I'm not sure what you're hoping to accomplish here," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But this is my show, and I treat every guest with respect. I expect the same in return." Harry rolled his eyes. Actually rolled his eyes on national television. "Oh, here we go." The host gets defensive. Tamron didn't flinch. "I'm not defensive. I'm setting a boundary. If you can't have a respectful conversation, then maybe this isn't the right place for you." Harry stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You know what? Maybe it isn't. Maybe I don't need to sit here and waste my time with someone who doesn't understand the first thing about what I'm dealing with." The audience was on the edge of their seats. Tamron remained seated, looking up at him calmly. "I've been nothing but respectful to you since you walked in here. I can't say the same about how you've treated me or this show." Harry pointed at her, his voice rising. "You don't get to tell me how to act. Do you know who I am?" And there it was, the moment everyone would be talking about. The entitlement laid bare for all to see. Tamron stood up now, matching his energy but with complete control. "Yes, I know exactly who you are," she said. "But that doesn't give you the right to disrespect me or anyone else here. We invited you on this show as a guest, and you've done nothing but insult what we do." Harry's face was red now. "This is ridiculous. I don't have to stand here and listen to this." Tamron crossed her arms. "You're absolutely right. You don't. In fact, I think it's time for you to leave." The studio went completely silent. Everyone was holding their breath. Did Tamron Hall just kick a prince off her show? Yes. Yes, she did. Harry stared at her in disbelief. "Excuse me?" Tamron didn't back down for even a second. "You heard me. This interview is over. I'm not going to let you continue to disrespect me, my crew, or my audience. We deserve better than this." Harry let out an angry laugh. "You're actually serious right now." "Completely serious," Tamron replied. "I've given you multiple chances to have a real conversation, and you've chosen to be hostile instead. So yes, I'm asking you to leave." Harry looked around the studio as if waiting for someone to intervene, to tell him this wasn't really happening. But the crew just watched. The audience just watched. Nobody was coming to his rescue. "This is unbelievable," Harry muttered. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" Tamron nodded. "I'm standing up for myself and my show, something I should have done earlier." Harry shook his head, his expression a mix of anger and shock. "You're going to regret this." Tamron stood her ground. "The only thing I regret is that it had to come to this. But I'm not going to apologize for demanding respect." For a moment, Harry just stood there, clearly not used to being told no, clearly not used to facing consequences for his behavior. He looked at Tamron one more time, as if trying to intimidate her with his stare, but she didn't budge. "Fine," he finally said. "I'm leaving." "Good," Tamron replied simply. Harry turned and started walking toward the exit, but he couldn't help himself. He had to get one more shot in. He stopped and looked back over his shoulder. "You know, I came here thinking this would be a legitimate platform, but I guess I was wrong." Tamron didn't miss a beat. A legitimate platform requires legitimate conversation. You weren't interested in that. Harry's face twisted into a scowl. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," Tamron said. "I've been doing this for years. I've interviewed presidents, activists, artists, and yes, even royalty. And never, not once, has someone treated me the way you have today." Harry opened his mouth to respond, but Tamron held up her hand. "I'm done," she said firmly. "There's nothing more to discuss. Please leave my studio." The audience started to clap, slowly, at first, then building into full applause. They were supporting Tamron, showing her that she'd done the right thing. Harry's expression darkened even more at the sound of the applause. He clearly hadn't expected this reaction. "This is absurd," he said, raising his voice over the clapping. "You're all ridiculous." Now he was insulting the audience, too. Tamron stepped forward, positioning herself between Harry and the crowd. "That's enough," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "Security, please escort our guest out." 2 security guards appeared from the wings, moving quickly but professionally. Harry looked at them with pure indignation. "Don't you dare touch me," he snapped. "Sir, we need you to leave," one of the guards said politely but firmly. Harry glared at Tamron. "You're making a huge mistake." Tamron remained calm, her arms still crossed, her posture strong. "The mistake was mine for thinking this could be a productive conversation, but I've corrected it now." Harry turned to the audience, spreading his arms wide in a gesture of disbelief. "You're all witnessing this, right? You see how she's treating me?" But the audience wasn't on his side. Someone shouted, "You were rude to her." Another voice called out, "She gave you so many chances." Harry's face went from red to almost purple. He wasn't used to this. He wasn't used to people disagreeing with him, calling him out, holding him accountable. This was probably the first time in his life that his title and status meant nothing, where behavior actually mattered more than birthright. "I don't need this," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "I don't need any of you." The security guards gently but firmly began guiding him toward the exit. Harry shrugged them off, wanting to walk out on his own terms, but they stayed close to make sure he actually left. As he reached the edge of the stage, Harry turned back one final time. His eyes locked with Tamron's, and for a moment, the entire studio held its breath, waiting to see if there would be one more outburst. "You just ended your career," Harry said, his voice low and threatening. Tamron smiled, actually smiled, and shook her head. "No, I just proved why it's lasted this long. Because I don't let anyone treat me like I'm less than I am." Harry's mouth opened and closed like he wanted to say something else, but no words came out. He'd been bested, and he knew it. Everyone knew it. With one final glare, he turned and stormed off the stage, the security guards following close behind. The moment he disappeared through the exit, the entire studio erupted in cheers and applause. The audience was on their feet, clapping and whistling and shouting their support for Tamron. The crew was applauding too, showing their respect for their host who had just handled one of the most difficult situations imaginable with grace and strength. Tamron stood there for a moment, taking it all in, letting herself breathe. Then she turned to the audience with a genuine smile. "Well," she said, and the crowd laughed at her understated reaction. That was certainly unexpected. More laughter and applause. Tamron walked back to her chair and sat down, smoothing her outfit and taking a sip of water. She looked directly into the camera. "You know, we prepare for a lot of things on this show. We do our research, we plan our questions, we try to create an environment where real, honest conversation can happen. But sometimes, despite all that preparation, things don't go the way you expect." The audience was hanging on her every word now, completely focused. "What you just witnessed was something I never wanted to happen," Tamron continued. "I never want to ask a guest to leave. I always hope that we can find common ground, that we can have a meaningful exchange, even when we disagree. But I also know that respect is non-negotiable." The audience applauded again, and Tamron nodded in acknowledgement. "I built this show on the principle that everyone deserves to be heard," she said. "But that goes both ways. I deserve to be heard too. My crew deserves to be respected. You, the audience, deserve to be respected. And when someone comes into this space and treats us like we're beneath them, when they mock what we do and dismiss our value, I have to draw a line." Someone in the audience shouted, "You did the right thing," and others echoed the sentiment. Tamron smiled. "Thank you. I appreciate that, because honestly, in the moment, it's not easy. You're questioning yourself, wondering if you're overreacting, if you should just let it go and push through. But then I remembered something my mother told me a long time ago. She said, 'Tamron, you teach people how to treat you. If you accept disrespect, you're telling them it's okay. And I wasn't going to tell anyone that it's okay to treat me that way.'" The applause was thunderous now. People were nodding, some were wiping tears from their eyes. This had become more than just a dramatic moment. This had become a teaching moment, a reminder of self-worth and boundaries and standing up for yourself. Tamron took another sip of water and let the applause die down before continuing. "You know what's interesting? When you're a woman in this business, especially a woman of color, you're often expected to just take it, to smile and nod and not make waves. To be grateful that you have a seat at the table, even when someone's trying to knock you out of that seat. But I didn't get here by being quiet. I got here by being authentic, by being professional, and by respecting myself enough to demand respect from others." The audience was completely silent now, absorbing every word. "And I want to say something to anyone watching this who's ever been in a similar situation," Tamron continued, her voice strong and clear. "Whether it's at work, at home, in a relationship, wherever, you have the right to set boundaries. You have the right to say, 'This isn't okay. You don't have to accept mistreatment just because someone has a title, or money, or fame, or power. Your dignity is not negotiable. The standing ovation that followed was spontaneous and sustained. Tamron stood up, clasping her hands together and nodding her thanks to the audience. There were tears in some people's eyes, not from sadness, but from the power of what they'd just witnessed. Not just the confrontation, but the strength it took to stand up in that moment. When the applause finally subsided, Tamron sat back down and looked at the camera with a softer expression. Now, I know this isn't what anyone tuned in to see today. We had other segments planned, other conversations I was looking forward to having. But life doesn't always follow the script, does it? The audience chuckled, and the tension that had filled the room began to ease. What I can promise you is this, Tamron said. This show will always be a place where real conversations happen. Where we tackle difficult subjects, where we celebrate amazing people, where we learn from each other. And it will always be a place where respect is the foundation of everything we do. She paused, then added with a slight smile, even when things get a little chaotic. The audience laughed again, and this time it felt good, like a release of all the tension that had built up during the confrontation. So, here's what we're going to do, Tamron said, shifting gears. We're going to take a quick break, we're going to reset, and then we're going to come back with some incredible guests who actually want to be here and who have amazing stories to share. Because that's what this show is really about. Not drama, not confrontation, but connection. The audience applauded again, and Tamron smiled warmly at them. Thank you for being here with me through that. Thank you for your support, and thank you for understanding why I had to do what I did. As the show cut to commercial, the camera stayed on Tamron for just a moment longer, capturing her taking a deep breath and nodding to herself. In that brief, unguarded moment, you could see the weight of what had just happened settling on her shoulders. But you could also see her strength, her resolve, her absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Behind the scenes, the crew swarmed around her during the break, offering words of support and encouragement. The producers were already working on how to restructure the rest of the show, but Tamron remained focused and professional, ready to move forward. What had started as a routine interview had turned into one of the most memorable moments in talk show history, not because of who the guest was, but because of how the host handled an impossible situation. Tamron Hall had shown the world that respect isn't something you beg for or hope for, it's something you demand. And when someone refuses to give it, you have every right to remove them from your space. The confrontation had lasted less than 15 minutes from start to finish, but its impact would resonate far beyond that. In those few minutes, viewers had witnessed something rare and powerful. They'd seen a woman stand her ground against someone who believed their status made them untouchable. They'd seen grace under pressure. They'd seen strength wrapped in professionalism. When the show came back from commercial, Tamron had completely reset. Her smile was genuine, her energy was positive, and she dove into the next segment with the same warmth and enthusiasm she brought to every show. She didn't dwell on what had happened. She didn't use it to garner sympathy or attention. She simply moved forward, proving that she was exactly who she claimed to be during the confrontation, a professional who knew her worth. The rest of the show went smoothly, filled with engaging conversations and genuine moments. But everyone watching knew they'd witnessed something special in those first few minutes. They'd seen what happens when entitlement meets integrity, and integrity had won.